Welcome back to Unfiltered, Unspoken podcast, where we're told you we're going to continue to share life experiences in hopes that you can start the journey to healing. We have another amazing guest. I just always like to say this. She said she loved the intro, so
Yes, it's beautiful. The music's got its own vibe. All the colors, all the way you do it, put it together. Yeah, it's fantastic.
thank you, Shay. And it's Shay, right? I got that right.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to welcome Shay. She has another amazing testimony to help with others. And it's a combination of so many things. So me and Sid are ready to get into it. Welcome, Shay. If you could tell the audience a little bit about yourself. And then, as you know, Sid is going to kick off that first question.
Oh, well, first of all, Demetria, thank you. And Sid, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here and excited to jump off this journey. So I am a fearless communicator. I'm a certified fearless living coach and trainer, master practitioner in neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis, and Reiki. And I am just a coach, an author, a trainer, a leadership advocate, and I'm excited to be here.
Well, thank you again for being here with us tonight. We do like to start off always with our guests, just knowing a little bit about childhood years, early development, adolescent, just to see if we can draw parallels between then and kind of the trajectory of your life. So tell us a little bit about your childhood growing up, your home structure, and if you experienced any trauma during that time frame.
Who hasn't? But the truth is, I came from a two-parent home, but they were not nurturing, not loving, not present. And so they got a divorce when I was 16. And because I didn't feel loved or nurtured or any of those things, and there was alcohol in the home, I started drinking at the age of 11 was the first time that I had gotten drunk. And by the time I was 14, I had broken a bone in my knee and had such excruciating pain that I was suicidal thoughts through the pain. And by the time I was 15, I was drinking daily. And at 16, I got a DUI. And at 25, I quit drinking altogether. So that's kind of a quick version. But yeah, there was lots of bullying from my family, including both my brothers and my parents. But there was also abuse, addiction, anger, depression, low self-worth. And it was, I became, as a child, I was growing up in exactly what all of my family was doing. They were drinking, they were smoking cigarettes, but they were not loving or caring to themselves either. And so I was just acting out as a little girl, the youngest of three, just trying to find my own way, trying to get attention and love, care in any way that I could. And so drinking became what I turned to. Although at some point, I think it was it was after the first time I got drunk. So I think it was probably, 7th, 8th grade, middle school years that I became a bully as well and started to be mean to the younger people in school as well.
Okay, I don't even know where to start because we have a lot of similarities, but this is not about me. And I love for folks to come out and talk about this. And just to know we're not alone because a lot of us go through a lot of similarities.
Right.
So I guess I want to start. Um, how early did the abuse start in your life, and can you tell us how it started?
Sure. So I would have to say would say abuse in the form of verbal abuse. Gosh, I don't even know how young I was. Maybe I'll say 5, because that's just what came to me. At I remember being daddy's little girl, and then all of a sudden something shifted, and there was a lot of anger that was all of a sudden being shown. And then my mom, it was never a loving, caring mother-child relationship. It was more of a, how can I be, in a way, well, not in a way, it's what she said. How can I be so fat? So it was always pointing out my appearance, and in the verbal form of, it almost sounded like it was going to be a compliment, like, oh, that looks really good on you. I can't believe you're so fat that you fit into that size. And it turned to be into what I call a backhanded compliment. And it was, like I said, it just was never nurturing. So there was that verbal abuse, physical abuse. Spanking was always in my house, but it wasn't done with a hand. It was done, we had a wood burning stove, so it was done with like boards and things like that. So it was, that's how we were punished. I remember, again, I was probably between maybe 8 years old, between 5 and 8. I was late for Sunday school one day, and, or that's what I was told anyway. I was in my room getting ready for Sunday school, and my dad came up, and I feel like he spanked me harder and more than he had ever had before. And it wasn't until literally just up until a few years ago that I realized, in a different incident in my own life, talking it through, because I was triggered of what had happened, is that I realized that my dad had actually been mad and angry at someone else in the family, and had come upstairs and was taking it out on me. And so that's how abuse showed up in my house.
Now, you said you had your first drink around age 11. What, if you can recall, what was it, that you enjoyed about the feeling? Were you partial to the taste? What was your kind of experience, surrounding that first time?
Yeah, the answer is yes to all the above. But it actually, that was the first time I got drunk. The first taste is when I was a little kid. I would sit on my dad's lap and take sips out of his beer. And I remember one time my mom said, "Okay, that's enough. She's had enough. She's feeling it. She's getting giggly." And I remember as a little kid, like, I loved the taste of beer. So at 11, my oldest brother was graduating high school, and what the thing to do back then was, we had a keg, and we had a party. And so while everyone was drinking keg beer, which you would think, since I liked the taste of it, that I would be drinking that, but I didn't want anyone to know. So instead, I went into the refrigerator where the wine was, and I was drinking wine straight out of the bottle. And I drank 2 bottles of it at 11 years old. And I loved the taste of it. It was tasted like Kool-Aid to me. And it made everything just more fun and enjoyable. And that's what the feeling I had. Was I stupid? I mean, I'm sure I was. I'm 11 years old acting like being stupid, but who knows? Because I was around other teenagers and adults who were also, drinking as well. So, I don't really recall how I was actually showing up, but I know the feeling was that I was having fun and enjoyed it, and the taste going down smooth like Kool-Aid.
The bullying. So I'm going to jump in, and I may jump back.
That's okay.
But I want to go into the bullying piece. Did the bullying start at home and then evolve into school, or did it start at school and then you start bullying after you had been bullied so much?
Well, I think that's kind of how bullies become bullies, right? Is because hurt people because they're hurting, and they do it when they're hurting. And that's really what was like I can look back and see that's what happened. So, you know, I was hurting from home, and then and yet at other older ages at school, you know, people are mean to you because they're just repeating what their parents had said. So my brothers were older than me, and they were just repeating what my parents had said to me, made fun of my weight as a little kid. And so then their friends joined in. And so it was just a beat up on me, if you will, verbally. Now what ends up happening is, so I'm acting out. So then I'm riding the bus. I'm at a certain age, or there's some younger kids who are looking up to me as the older one on the bus. And so I learned at that young age, there's some power in that. There's some authority. There's some respect there that I wasn't getting anywhere else. There was a tension there. And that is when I really learned, like, oh, well, if I bully them, if I'm verbal to them, then they'll respect me. And again, I didn't know any of this. I didn't understand any of this until I got out of an abusive relationship in my mid-30s and started to going to counseling and peeling away the layers of the onion that I am, that we all are, and really started to heal and realize that I was in an abusive relationship because I had been bullied. And so it was just a constant, well, now I'm being bullied by my boyfriend at the time. But yet I also bullied him back. So it was this constant, like, vicious cycle that we go through as children in our 20s sometimes, that we don't even realize what's happened until we're in this mid 30s, 40s and beyond, going, what's going on in my life? It's time for me to heal. And that's what had happened. That's when I started to really uncover the word abuse. I started to uncover the trauma that I had experienced in childhood. Our childhood experiences shape our adult decisions. So I didn't even realize. It wasn't until I got out of that abusive relationship and started going to see a counselor that I'm sitting with the counselor, Christian counselor, and we're sitting together, and in that first session, and he said, so what's been going on? And I shared with him, and he said, you've been abused. And I said, and I whispered it, and I was like, abused? I hadn't even, that thought, that word hadn't even crossed my mind, let alone saying it out loud. And then as we did our work together, really, like I said, peeling away the layers, that it wasn't just that circumstance that I was in, but it had trailed all the way back. I could pinpoint it all the way back to each family member. The abuse, whether it was verbal or physical, had happened, that it was like, wow, I hadn't looked at my life as being traumatic or abusive. I hadn't looked at myself as a victim. I was just going through the motions of being a survivor so much that I hadn't even been paying attention to what was going on, because I didn't know. I didn't know I wasn't thriving. All I knew was that I was surviving.
Absolutely. Now, did you have any siblings? Did they, experience either the same or their own respective set of issues in the house? Or like we see a lot of the times, like if a child was overweight, sometimes they were the only one that was overweight and received such harsh criticism and treatment. What was that dynamic like, and did that in any way attribute to the trauma that you did experience?
Sure. So I have two older brothers, and they experienced the same similar type of thing. And we had all, it wasn't until I was on this healing journey of my own things that I started to learn, again, our childhood experiences shape our adult decisions. And I'm discussing that with them. Like, what was it like for you growing up? And they were like, well, you were the favorite. And I'm like, oh my God, I was not. I'm the baby. I'm thinking you guys were the favorite. So we were able to at least unpack that. But yeah, they had their own trauma. They had their own abuse that the parents had put on them, their own responsibilities, which that's something that I think a lot of people don't even talk about is as children of, it's not really an abuse, but I want to be able to put a right word with it. It's not neglect, but it's almost as if you're putting adult responsibility onto children at such a young age that in itself is an abuse, because you're not even treating the child like a child. You're treating the child like an adult in a child's body. So there's this weight, spiritual and energetic weight that we carry. And so my brothers and I had talked about that, like how they felt so responsible for the things that my dad had put on them. We grew up on a farm in the middle of the country in the Midwest. And so it was that they had to be, we had jobs at 8 years old and at 9 and 10 years old. And they were driving tractors at such a young age. And I was driving a lawnmower at 8 years old. And the weight, the enormity, heaviness of that responsibility is also becomes the weight of the actual physical weight that we were carrying around.
Are you and your siblings close now? Did this like make you closer, or did it separate y'all? I know a lot of times, sometimes our family traumas can separate you or bring you closer as siblings.
Well, so when I started down my healing journey, I decided that it was my inner voice that was my issue. And so when I started to change the way I talk to myself, I changed the way I talk to my family. And so I would start to ask everyone different questions. Like I would ask my dad, like, are you asking me to do something, or are you trying to manipulate me into doing it? My mom and my dad were very, very sarcastic. So I would say things like, are you actually mad at someone, or are you trying to be funny? And then my brothers, we would get to the point where I'm like, okay, so what's really going on here? And this is what I learned about me. And this is what I learned about being with parents who are emotionally unavailable, is that we attract emotionally unavailable people. So is that what's been happening in your relationships? And to be honest, we actually grew very close. My dad, because I had changed the way I spoke to myself and then him, my dad and I became best friends in the last 5 years of his life. I mean, such a healing, profound journey. Both my brothers, my one brother, my oldest brother is my roommate now. And to say the least, that how much we've grown and become closer. And then we have a brother that was between us, and unfortunately passed away in 2020. But before he went, I mean, we had grown so much. And then together, the three of us, because we had healed and grown, we took care of our parents when they were diagnosed with cancer. And my parents were divorced. They lived separately, but we were still able to be there as a unit, making decisions as children for the best care of our parents together. And then, after they passed, what happens next and all of that. And you don't see that nowadays, to be able to come together as a healed unit, to really be able to make best decisions for your parents. So I'm so thankful we were able to do that.
Absolutely. And I had a good question lined up and definitely forgot where I wanted to go. And that's all right.
It'll come back around.
It did. Here we
Yeah,
go.
I was going to say, it's not my fault.
Do you know any of your family history beyond your parents? Like, do you know of anything that they suffered that attributed them acting the way that they did, or anything about their upbringing?
I've tried to ask my dad this question because one day he was telling me, and this is probably not a nice thing to say, but I was with my stepmom and him. And my stepmom had started to share with me how he had been treating her, which was not nice. And he was not really a great husband to my mom either. And so we were sitting at lunch one day, and he was telling me how amazing his parents were. I don't even know how he started talking about them, but he had started sharing how great they were, how loving and nurturing parents they were, out of the blue. And I said, well, what happened to you? And he was like, what? And he kind of laughed. And I go, no, really, Dad, if your parents were so great, what happened to you? Why did you become not a great parent? And he was so shocked. And I said it, now, mind you, not everybody can do this, but I said it in a way that was not shaming or blaming or condemning to him at all, but more in a just a curious tone. Like, no, really, I'm just curious what shifted for you. And he could never find it. He could never figure out why he wasn't a great parent. He said, he did say at that point, he said, I just did the best I could. And so I just always looked at my parents weren't equipped. They didn't have the right tools to become the parents that they needed to be for us. And so I had to learn to forgive them, and which I did gratefully, especially after, we were going through all the healing journey. My mom, on the other hand, my mom's and I talked about this a lot. And the only thing that we figured out is, one, her dad was an alcoholic. And so my dad had a drinking problem when my parents were married. And so we attribute that, alcoholics, that a child of an alcoholic typically marries an alcoholic. And so we look at that, and we talked about that a lot. My mom's mom actually had been diagnosed later on in life as bipolar. And so we talked a lot about her mood swings, that she wasn't nurturing or loving. She didn't have that capacity. But then was it because she was bipolar, or it was because she was dealing with an alcoholic husband? So you want to pull back and go, okay, well, here's the diagnoses, and that's probably why. But when you start to dig a little deeper, it's like, okay, well, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right? So was it because, and my dad would say that my grandma wasn't a very nice person. It's like, okay, well, was she not a nice person because my grandfather was also having affairs on her and he was an alcoholic? Or was she not a nice person? And then that's how he dealt with it. So you just never know. So it was really just came at it from a point of curiosity, just trying to kind of figure it out. Because I think that's, as humans, that's what we like to do. We want to put logic and understand things. Our brains want to be like, well, why did someone do that? And so I think we all kind of came together separately, but in the conversations that I had with them about, well, just help me understand why this happened. And we didn't really come up with an answer, to be honest. It was more about, well, I mean, unfortunately, this is just what it is.
But I think in a sense that you help them overcome and see why. And I always say that is facing your reflection in the mirror, which most people are scared to do.
Yeah, for sure.
I want to jump back to when you were 14. You broke your knee. Can you tell us a little bit about that? How did you break your knee? And then how did it go into making you feel suicidal? Did it cause an addiction?
Yeah. So I was a cheerleader, and at the time we had these little round trampolines where you could jog on them. And my girlfriend and I were doing cheerleading jumps in the middle of our living room, as one would do in the Midwest in the middle of winter, and instead of doing it outside. And so we were doing the cheerleading jumps, and I did the jump. And when I came down, my knees locked, and the corner piece of the larger bone on the bottom leg, I think it's called the tibia, broke off. And so even the slightest pressure on my big toe was excruciatingly painful. And we went to the doctor, got x-rayed, found out that there's not much they could do for it at that stage of life. Just give me painkillers and put me in a brace that went from my ankle to my hip and had a hinge at the knee, and I was on crutches. Well, over the course of the next few weeks, my painkillers didn't seem to help the pain at all. Like, in fact, it made me extremely nauseous. My stomach hurt constantly with the painkillers. And so my mom, in her wisdom, just said, well, stop taking them. And unfortunately, at that time of the world, there wasn't a whole lot of other options of painkillers. And so I think I just grew to be so miserably in pain physically that I didn't have the drive to go to school. I just stayed at home. My brother, who is also still at the same school, was able to go to all my teachers and get homework and stuff and bring it home to me. And so I was kind of homeschooling myself. And so to be that age, 12, 13, 14, middle school, to be able to, one, not be around your friends. It was very isolating. So that in itself was very depressing. I didn't have nurturing or loving parents that were at home. So that's also very isolating. I didn't have, for me, if someone is hurt, I'm coddling them like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I wish I could take away the pain, holding them. There was none of that. And so it was just, I feel like, and I can look back and say this now, that, the first time that I got drunk several years before is like when the enemy crept in. And now here I am, very isolated, very depressed. And that's when I feel like the enemy did his work. And so it was a constant, why do I want to live like this? Constant conversation with the enemy of, do I want to live like this? Why would I want to be here? I could just end it all. And as I came out of that, that was constantly there. That dark, evil voice was still there, and questioning of, why am I here? There's no reason to be here. I don't need to be here. I have nothing to offer. I have nothing to give. And I'm in so much pain. And as the physical pain got to be where it was less and I could go back to school, that's, again, now I know when the emotional pain really took hold, because I was feeling it during that whole time. I wasn't masking it with drugs. I was the total opposite, where most people are taking drugs to mask the pain. I was feeling it, and it just led me down a hole of depression and brokenheartedness, to be quite honest, because that's how I felt. I just felt so alone and neglected during that whole section of my life.
Aside from like the feeling of self-loathing, what was your, I guess, kind of personality on while you were, under the influence of either alcohol or your painkillers? Did you, I guess, what, outside of just needing them to to fix the physical pain, what else did, these substances do for you? Did they change anything, about your personality or the way that you communicate with people or feel around people? What was the feeling that, I guess, that you enjoyed, or what is the feeling that it helped dull for you?
Well, so the painkillers was, I never take them long enough for them to actually work with any physical or emotional pain. The alcohol, I think, was really gave me a freedom to be okay with being okay, like to be happy and to be joyful and to feel more alive, more energetic, I think, than most people. It's a depressant and it makes them lower. And for me, I think it gave me the actual opposite. And I think it stopped that evil voice, where it was more like, I'm invincible. I'm not ready to die yet. It's more like I can do anything. So for me, the alcohol kind of had a reverse effect on it.
Interesting. Um, so part with the broken knee, did that start? Well, you were already drinking. Did you increase your drinking while in pain? I guess more drastically,
So
or
I had drank once before then, and then it was several years later after that I was actually drinking every day. So I was not drinking during that time that my knee was broken. So it was actually still broken for 26 years. But during the time of that healing where I was isolated when I was at home, I didn't drink at all.
okay. Oh wow.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask just without the support of like not feeling that motherly love, going through the pain and through the healing and I get of your broken knee and then going back to school, how did you navigate through that, the feeling of no support, the emotional feeling of I can't do anything because my parents won't help me get medicine or recommend a new medicine. You're just in pain.
I think the only thing there's two things that I think got me through that is one, I had good friends. I masked everything. I didn't tell anyone the truth about what was going on emotionally, or even about the pain, because I didn't want anyone to know that I was in so much pain. I didn't want anyone to think I was less than. Number one. Number two, even though I had all this evil thoughts and, like I said, the enemy crept in, I always had a very deep faith and belief in God, and knew and still know that he is always with me and that he had a plan for me. And I would just lean on that, even though I'm doing bad things and not making good choices at teenage years. I still had that deep foundation from going to Sunday school day in and day out and growing up, that is who I belong to.
And what after after these kind of adolescent years, what is the next kind of pivotal moment for you? Where did life kind of take you next, or what was the next big significant moment?
Oh gosh, well there was many. So the big one was I got a DUI at 16, and the morning I woke up after that, I said, literally, I'm laying in bed and I opened my eyes and I'm so humiliated. And I said, okay, God, I get it. I understand what being humble means. And you have to be humiliated first. And so I have messed this life up so far in these 16 years. So it's yours. Do with it what you want. And it was not like a cartoon, or all of a sudden it's Technicolor and everything's great and it's like, ta-da, it's not like the movies and everything's perfect. It's still a long journey. But I had to go to court appointed AA, and I had to do probation, community service, all the things. My lawyer didn't show up for court, and my mom didn't know what to do because none of us had gone to court before. And so she said, plead guilty. And so I pled guilty, and the judge gave me all the things and said, you can't have your license back till you're 18, which was a year and a half at that point. And so I'm doing all the things. I'm going to AA, I'm going to probation, I'm doing my community service, and I get it all done within a matter of, I don't know, maybe even a few months. And my probation officer said, what we can do is write a letter to the courts because your attorney did not show up. What we'll do is write you've already gone to your attorney to appeal because you didn't have legal representation. She said, on your behalf as your probation officer, we can also add to that appeal that you've already done all of this work already, and that I am dismissing you from your probation, and see if that doesn't help you. And I just said, okay. And so again, I'm a very prayerful person. So it was a constant prayer. It was a constant talk with God, and that this is what you want, that would be great, blah, blah, blah. I slowed down significantly drinking. I didn't stop completely, but I did slow down. And then that was in February. And then in the end of June of that year, my dad left. He told me that he was leaving. He didn't tell my mom. And I had to tell my mom. And my mom, unfortunately, fell apart. And I became the caregiver of her. I became the parent of her. I became the nurturing, loving, caring parent of her. And I was just getting ready to start my senior year of high school. And so I got handed a shitty hand this first section of my life. And then I somehow moved on to graduate high school with full honors. And I could only say that by the grace of God, because I don't know what I did. And maybe the teachers felt sorry for me because it was a small town and they knew what I was going through with my mom and my dad. And then in the meantime, also my grandma, who was my mom's mom, was being in and out of mental wards of the hospital because she was technically had dementia at that time, but they were diagnosing her with bipolar and everything else. So that was another huge defining moment of that uber responsibility that we talked about in the beginning of being placed on me. And I've got to grow up and I've got to figure this out. And what do I do next with my life? And it wasn't until I went to college for computer science and I quit. And I was like, this is not for me. And so lived up with my girlfriends and lived off my savings for a while. And finally, my dad had said, you know what? Why don't you move to Kansas City with me, which was about 4 hours away. And so I did. And I was 19. That was the part that saved my life. First part that saved my life was the DUI. Second part was moving to Kansas City. And I went to cosmetology school. And that was the other thing that saved my life. I really learned, just like being a server in a restaurant, cosmetology, I think, teaches you really how to serve another person, really gets you out of yourself and being able to give freely and completely to another person. And I did that for 28 years, still do it. But that was my career. I worked in various salons, went back to school and got my instructor's license, and worked in a salon where they had an educational program. And I worked my way to the top for that, became the regional educator. I was traveling all the time, sending me to shows and learning new things, coming back, teaching 3 different salons in the Kansas City area. And it was an international salon, so it was able to really bring back some really great fun things we were doing on fashion shows, fashion week, stuff like that. And being able to participate in that just really grew my confidence. But at the same time, I had this other secret going on. I was dating a man who was abusive. And I didn't even know that was happening or realize that was what was going on. I mean, yeah, I knew he wasn't nice. And yeah, I know he pushed me down, or he did this, or he tried to choke me and stuff like that. But then in the back of my head, it was, he talked to me about, well, it's because you caused this. And so finally, after so many years, I was able to get out of that. He was in a car accident, and that was the next defining moment that saved my life. And once I got out of that car accident, again, is when the healing journey began, and is just an extension of where I am today.
Okay. Whew. So you keep adding more and more onto this. So I guess I'm gonna ask a question. I guess it's a kind of 2-in-1.
Okay.
Were you messing the guy that was abusing you? Were you messing with him while you were taking care of your mom? And if so, how did you deal with that abuse, because I can only imagine verbal and physical abuse on both ends.
Yeah, no, my mom. So that was only when I was in high school. I was taking care of my mom. So by the time I met him, I was 23. I was living on my own, had my own job, own my apartment and everything. So no, I was just me, and no real support or anyone to go to and say, hey, this is what's happening. It was more like all I kept hearing was that what I thought was my inner voice. And, you made your bed, you have to lie in it. You made your decision. This is who you're going to be with. You stay the course. What I didn't realize again until later is these are, phrases that people put into us, our parents install into us, and that we take to heart, we follow. And that's what was happening. And so I was in this relationship with him. And, I kept hearing my mom, who would say to me when I was younger, was like, how can you be so stupid? So I didn't want her to say that to me anymore. So I'm like, well, I'm going to make this work. No matter what, I'm going to make this work. And I think that's why I stayed as long as I did.
And what was, if there was one, what was the significant or pivotal moment where you were just like, this has to change, how I'm feeling needs to change? When did you kind of take your dive into the healing process and your like spiritual practices?
Yeah. So so much happened. Well, over the course of years, he had, I'll just put it this way. He choked me, held a gun to my head, threatened to kill me numerous times, and got to the point where it was daily. We would break up. He would come to my job. We'd break up. He would break into my house constantly, things like that. At one point, I think he had, if I remember correctly, I think this was the last time he was actually, well, not the last time, but the big last time, is that he had his work boots on and he had pushed me on the ground and he's literally stomping on my legs. And I had boot size bruises up and down my legs, and I am fighting back every single time. And so I'm literally reaching up and grabbing dishes off the table and hitting him over the head with it and throwing him at him. And it's not phasing him at all. It's as if he has the adrenaline of, 10,000 people, and he's just still continuing to stomp on me. And after that, I was like, that's it, I'm done. And I remember talking with him on the phone afterwards, because we did live separately. So that was a saving grace that I had. I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. And there was a voice, as if someone was sitting next to me on the couch, that said, not now, not now. And at the time, I thought it was my own fear saying, not now, because you haven't been alone. Are you sure you want to give up this relationship? But over the course of the next couple of years, I realized that voice to be the voice of God, and that he was preparing me for what was coming next. And so what ended up happening is, over the course of several years, is that his aunt and uncle, my boyfriend's aunt and uncle, shared with me that he had been abused by his mother when he was little. And that 14, he actually went to go live with them. And I knew that part, but I didn't know the birth to 14 years, what that was like. And so when they explained it to me, I was like, wow, I had no idea. And so that started to, like, not necessarily let me see him in a different light, but it gives that reason, that understanding of why we do the things that we do. And then that gave me knowledge to have later. So then that happened. His brother died. He becomes suicidal. Every single day he talked about wanting to shoot himself. And then he was in a car accident. And the car accident left him had brain damage. He was in ICU. He was in a coma. And I found him. Like, no one was called to informed. I had to just call around. He was missing. He wasn't answering his phone. He wasn't at his house. I just calling around to find him. And I happened to find him in the ICU. And so I called his mom and his sister, and they came to the hospital, and his sister and I were talking, and she's like, so you'll have to go and get his, you know, his insurance and his life insurance, and get all of that taken together, you know, get that prepared for us. And I said, what are you talking about? He doesn't have life insurance. He doesn't have insurance. And she's like, what are you talking about? I just talked to him a few weeks ago. He was telling me about this amazing job that he has, and he has all these great benefits. And I said, he's not working. And she goes, he's not working. I go, no. She goes, why is he not working? I said, he's been suicidal since the day your brother died. And she said, well, who's taking care of him? And I said, me. And so she said, you're enabling him. And I said, what was I supposed to do? You guys never come around. You never call. He was begging me to take care of him. So I did. And and that finally died down. And we're literally in the waiting room of the hospital. And that conversation died down because my business partner showed up at the salon, or showed up at my business partner in the salon showed up at the hospital. And so there was a witness, so that conversation stopped. But what's so profound about that is, as I was driving home from the hospital that first night after I found him, I realized that voice that was so many years before that said, not now, was because I needed to hand him back to his family and fill in the blanks that they didn't know. And so after he went from ICU, he went to a long-term care facility, and he went on to a nursing home where he lived the rest of his days. And I broke up with his sister. I had to break up with his sister in those months after his accident to say, hey, look, I've been trying to break up with him for years. I cannot do this. She says, you got to clean out his apartment. You got to take care of this. You got to take care of that. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I can't. This is not for me to do. This is for you to do, because I'm done. And I started to proceed to talk to her about the abuse. And she's like, well, I don't know why you stayed with him anyway. And I said, well, I've learned that he may have something called borderline personality disorder. And it is like bipolar and schizophrenia. And it has been known that if it is untreated, or it sometimes comes from child abuse that has been untreated. And she said, child abuse? He was never abused. And if he told you that, he's a liar. And I said, it wasn't him that told me. It was your aunt and uncle. And as soon as I said that, she started to cry. And then she started to tell me how she said, I tried to stop her. And now she's talking about her mom. I tried to stop her. I hope he doesn't blame me for not stopping her. All these things. And so it was really a profound healing moment, I think, for her as well, but definitely for me, because then I got to hand him back to his family so that they could move on with their life, and I could separate myself and move on from mine.
Oh, that was deep. Oh.
Well, I have more.
There's more.
That deepness.
Oh, let's go. I'm gonna bring you back. I don't even need to say nothing else. I'm bringing you back up. Come on.
Okay. Let's say I have more to that. So now, mind you, when he was 14, he moved in with his aunt and uncle, but he also has a twin brother. So from what the aunt and uncle informed me was that he was singled out and he was the one abused, but his twin brother was not. However, when he went to go live with his aunt and uncle, his twin brother went with him. And so his twin brother, unfortunately, ended up on drugs and everything, in and out of jail and everything else. So now the real deep rooted unfortunate circumstances of our adult decisions is based on our childhood experiences. is like this. On one side, he had his mom's side of the family, and on the other side, he had his dad's side of the family. And he had half siblings on his dad's side of the family. And his twin brother had never met his one of his half brothers. And so during our relationship, we had become friends, or we had become, to the point where we were visiting one of the half brothers in another state. And I got to be friends with the sister-in-law, and we remained friends through the whole thing. And so on the night of his accident, I called them to lean on them. And they had said, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry we missed your call. We've been out. It's our wedding anniversary." And I'm like, wow, what a date to remember. This is your wedding anniversary. And here my boyfriend was just in a car accident. And so many years later, but let me back up and say that her and I remained friends throughout all this time. And this has been 15 years ago now. We would remain friends. We would call, we would talk whenever I was in the Houston area. Her and I would get together, I'd visit. And at some point, I connected her with his ex-wife. Now, you might be saying, "Shay, you didn't even mention that." Well, at some point in our long relationship, remember, we didn't live together. He decided to cheat on me, and he had married another woman and had a baby with her, even though he had previously had a baby with her. But they lived together, and we lived together because he said he was living with me. And it is very convoluted and crazy and twisted, and I can't even begin to unfold it in this hour podcast. It takes years to figure it out myself. But what I did is at some point, because I was still friends with the sister-in-law, and she would ask me how he is. And I said, "I don't know. I've lost after I broke up with the sister, I don't know what happened to him. I know he went to a nursing home, and that's it. I have no idea." And so in 2020, I'm in Houston and I'm visiting with the sister-in-law. I said, "I've been thinking about God's placed on my heart to reach out to the ex-wife. What if I reached out to her? Can I connect you?" And she said, "Yes, please do." And so I did. I met with the ex-wife. I had a conversation with her, and I met their daughter, who's now 20. And I said, "Ask me whatever you want to ask me." And we had a long conversation about everything. She says, "Well, you're the other woman." And I said, "I understand. That's how it seems. And the way it was always portrayed to me is that you were the other woman, from his point of view." And I said, "And I believe he was so good at lying that you just believed everything he said." And the daughter proceeds to tell me that he has been in a nursing home in a wheelchair, half paralyzed all those years. And so I connect her with the sister-in-law, and they get to meet and they get to heal. And then a year later, the twin brother and the half brother get to meet for the first time in their lives in 50 something years. They get to meet. And I'm saying all of this to say, because I healed and learned to forgive and took a chance and listened to how I was directed, is that this family had a chance to heal and learn to forgive.
Ooh, I love it. We're almost at time. So we want to end this. Thank you so much, Shay, for being open, transparent, honest, raw, and letting people know you have to heal through your own trauma. And I use the same slogan too. So childhood traumas affecting adult decisions. And my slogan is helping others through life experiences.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of similarities, and it's beautiful that so many of us are about helping others heal through the connections of what we have been through. Before we go, would like if you can give the audience some advice on how to heal through the traumas that you have been through, because it's been so many, and I know you had to group it like kind of up, but more importantly, healing through a domestic situation because you went through some serious abuse. Just one thing for the women on that, why they should leave.
Mm. The why they should leave, I don't know if that's the right answer. The why they should heal is the answer. Well, one, because they deserve to heal. And two, the lies that they've been told is not true. And that could be the lies that the ones that they're with, or the lies that they were installed when they were children. There was 2 books that changed my life. One is Women Who Love Too Much, and it applies to men too. It should really be titled People Who Love Too Hard, but it really gives us a clear picture at why we choose the people we choose in relationships, because it's trying to heal the childhood wound of the parent-child relationship. Number 1. And then the other book is Boundaries, because I didn't even know what boundaries were. I didn't understand. I didn't know how to say no. I didn't know that I was a people pleaser or trying to make everyone happy, other than at the detriment of not making myself happy. And so those are the 2 main things that, before I even tell you to leave, I would say start reading and start healing so that you have the strength and the courage to reach out for help and support so that you can leave safely, because that's the important part, the leaving safely part.
Absolutely. And we do like to
100%.
Yes, and we do like to give you the chance to do what we do for all of our guests here, which we call shameless plug. You see all of your information scrolling across the bottom here. Let our viewers know how they can contact you, utilize your services. If you have anything you want to draw attention to, anything for sale, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. So I do have a book called How to Get Your Voice Back. And it really helped me. These are exercises that I did that I feel like God gave me to really help me through this healing journey. And you can go to my website at shasparks.com. That's SHASPARKS.com. And you can purchase it on the website there. And I will autograph it for you. And if you want to send me a personal message, feel free to do so on any of my social medias. You can also, I do also have a podcast called The Shā Sparks Show, and you can go to the shasparkshow.com and leave me a message. Let me know that you heard me on this amazing Unfiltered, Unspoken podcast, and I will give them a shout out on my podcast for sure. And I will play your message, because I believe in our messages heal, our testimonies heal other people. The lessons that we learn when we share it with other people, it sparks hope. And that's what we're doing. We're just igniting a spark of hope.
Thank you, Shā, so much. We truly appreciate it. Thank you for tuning in to Unfiltered Unspoken podcast, where we're going to continue to share life experiences. We hope that Shā's testimony, if you are going through what she has been through, we hope that it will give you strength to start your journey to healing. It's so many of us that are going through similar situations, and many are afraid to talk about it, but we're not. We're going to continue to help as many as we can. Ain't that right, City said?
That's right.
Thank you so much, Shā.
Thank you. It's been an honor to have you.
My pleasure. It's an honor to have you as well.